Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar discussion, which is on legacy applications modernization. I am Mariam from VOLO's Business Development and Marketing team, and it's my real pleasure to be your moderator today. Thank you all for joining us wherever we find you. I am delighted to say that this webinar is brought to you by VOLO experts in their respective spheres who have extensive experience in modernizing legacy applications. As a brief introduction, VOLO is a custom software development company that has been in this business for over 17 years with a team of 300 specialists. Now let's give a warm welcome to our speakers, experts, who are going to provide us with insights to support your business. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Nune Darpinyan, a seasoned software engineer with more than 10 years of experience in custom software development and legacy app modernization. I know that Nune has consulted numerous companies on their digital transformation journeys, helping them select the best approaches for modernizing their apps and has successfully led multiple projects from concept to completion. Hello, Nune.
Hi, Mariam. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. Thank you.
And our second expert on this topic is Ani Mehrabian. Ani is a senior software engineer with more than 8 years of experience in software development, 5 of which specifically doing legacy revival projects. Hello, Ani.
Thank you, Mariam. Hi, everyone.
Thank you for joining, girls. I'm sure there is a wealth of knowledge to share with us today. Now let's take a look at the agenda of our discussion. I will start with a brief overview of describing legacy applications' common characteristics, the challenges that businesses face with legacy apps, and the benefits of modernizing them. Then we will discuss the application modernization processes, exploring the common methods for modernization and the approaches taken specifically by VOLO. We will also give examples from various projects that we have had over the years to bring home the ideas that we discussed. Please keep in mind that at the end of the session, we will have time for your questions, so you can participate as well and ask all your burning questions in our chat room. And by the way, you can find that in the lower corner of your screen. Okay, and as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and you can access it in your mailbox within a couple of hours once it is over. So before we really get into it, let's first define what we mean by legacy applications. Nune, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Okay, let's start. So many people automatically assume that legacy software means a solution that's been written a long time ago in a language that's no longer considered modern. However, I really want to point out that neither the programming language nor the age of the application really determine whether it's outdated. In other words, you can have a solution that's written in, let's say, not so modern technology, but it doesn't automatically mean that it's legacy. It might be perfectly fine. It all depends on how well it has been maintained. So in fact, legacy can be considered any software, technology, or system that blocks or slows down your business processes and makes them difficult to adapt to your market dynamics.
Yeah, and Nune, I wanted to also add that as someone who is from the business development, there are some main concerns we have heard from business owners with regard to their existing legacy applications. And while the situation differs from business to business, most of these can be grouped into several categories, right?
Yeah, that's right. Let's look at these categories. So let's look at this list of main problems that legacy applications pose for your business. Okay, first one. I want to mention the no flexibility and scalability issue. This means that it's not possible to integrate, or almost not possible, your legacy solution with today's newest technologies. It can be cloud computing, API usage, any third-party business application. Next item, it's high maintenance cost. This is a big one for many companies. And companies with legacy systems have to pay extra for the upkeep of the outdated technology. And new development is often very expensive because things just can't be done quickly. Another big issue, security threats. If your system is outdated, you won't be able to schedule these constant updates or fixes. This eventually results in data protection issues. Another characteristic of legacy software is its massive code base, this big code base. In such cases, there is this unwanted chain of reaction of constant functionality breakages. You touch an area of code and it usually affects the others and causes unexpected problems. Next one, shortage of professionals. We should not ignore this. There are fewer and fewer professionals who can and want to work with outdated software. This is very natural, and most of the developers really prefer to work with modern technologies. That's why they constantly upgrade their skills. And finally, low performance. Legacy applications tend to work slower. I think we all have noticed that, and it creates a bottleneck in your business operations. Today, everyone lives a fast-paced life, and the last thing that anyone wants to face is something that slows them down. So eventually, of course, this ends in frustration of end users. So in order to mitigate all these mentioned challenges, companies make the strategic decision to modernize their outdated systems. So what exactly does it mean to modernize an application? Legacy application modernization aligns the existing software with modern business requirements with using new technologies. This definition sounds quite simple, but in reality, what happens underneath is quite complicated. First, to come to this decision, businesses must understand why modernization is so crucial. So in our world, and especially the world of tech, it's constant, rapidly changing state. Software systems support companies in navigating this ever-changing world. And there is a growing rift between increasing the business demands, yes, and the organization's ability to keep it up. And as you see from the picture, there is this gap, this acceleration gap. Organizations need to become adaptable and close this gap, let's say as soon as possible, to compete with this rapidly changing world. But adaptability is hard when your existing system is legacy. So if a company doesn't update its software promptly, it loses more in the long term. Moreover, the longer the delay, the more expensive the upgrade will be. Based on our own experience in VOLO with our clients, we have concluded that after a few years of waiting, just a few years of waiting, the costs of replacing or upgrading the outdated system increases exponentially. So in very basic, high-level terms, let's just sum up. Companies modernize to deal with issues such as data loss, lower performance, technical limitations, and high maintenance cost. So at this point, we understand why companies modernize. Now let's see what are the possible approaches to do it. Let's look here. So here we have 7 approaches. These approaches are presented in order of complexity and impact. Let's quickly go through each of them. First, let's start with low-risk processes, this first 3. They are localized changes and improvements to the existing system. So first one, encapsulation. That's when we leverage and extend the application features by encapsulating its data and functions, mostly making them available through APIs. Next one, rehost. That's when we redeploy the application component to another infrastructure. It can be physical, virtual, cloud, doesn't really matter. The important thing is we don't modify the code. Next one is replatform. That's when we migrate to a new runtime platform. We make minimal changes to the code, but we don't touch the code structure. So these three, they are relatively simpler, and of course their impact will be lower. Let's go to the next session. So it's medium risk processes. So they are gradual replacements or refurbishments, let's say. First one, refactor. That's the word we often hear and we often use. That's when we restructure and optimize the existing code, although not its external behavior. We just do it to remove technical debt and improve our non-functional attributes. And a bit more serious, which is re-architecting. That's when we materially alter the code and shift it to a new application architecture. And at the same time, we exploit new and better capabilities. So these two, as we see, their impact is growing with the risk. And the last one is our high-risk processes. These are complete transformations and even replacements. So rebuild. That's when we redesign or rewrite the application component from scratch. And we preserve, of course, the scope and specifications of the application. And the last one is the replacement. That's when we eliminate the former application, let's say, completely, and we replace it. And during this replacement, we consider new requirements and needs. So we see these approaches. So a question comes, how we decide which approach is suitable for a certain case. For that, we have a decision matrix that can help us. Let's have a look at it. So as we see from this matrix, the sections where the business requirements correspondence and the application complexity are on different size, the light blue one and the orange one, that's the places where we have to make critical decisions, either replace or do nothing. For other two cases, those are our general approach actions that we just discussed. Of course, this matrix serves as a helpful guide in general. And as a spoiler, I want to say that in our experience in VOLO, we have used all of these approaches in multiple projects. But before that, before diving into that, let's see what is our specific approach that we have developed over the years and how we make decisions when dealing with this legacy. Let's go step for step at our approach. Just I want to mention that, of course, the approach differs from case to case, and we adjust it based on the top problem with which the client comes to us. So the first step. At this step, the tech team conducts several discussions with the client. We understand the product, the client need. Next, a thorough assessment of current infrastructure is done, as we want to understand how the outdated system will affect the company's business, customer experience. We mainly focus on long-term benefits here. The team technically investigates the system. We evaluate current condition, all the dependencies, of course, and any issues that impact the quality the most. After this step, it may be decided that it's not beneficial to do modernization at all. That's to say, to retire the application, considering the costs of benefit after the analyze. I want to mention that it's not a bad thing. It happens, it's a common case. Sometimes it's perfectly fine to leave things as they are, rather than to do some unplanned, yes, and without measuring the risks, some actions. If after this point we decide to proceed with the modernization, the team suggests approaches and comes up with most optimal solutions. So we present it to the client, we create the plan, and of course, prioritize the actions. As a result, we have a roadmap that's created with timelines, with actions of our modernization. Just a note here that if we are also involved in active development of the product, so not only the legacy part, we do the continuous modernization approach, meaning that alongside with the continuous development of new features, we gradually manage the technical debt and we prevent it from becoming a business pain and eventually a legacy. So that's also an approach.
Yeah, and as we talked about specifically VOLO's approach, I'd like to announce that for the participants for this webinar, we have good news. And if you have a software application and there are some concerns related to the performance and you are just looking for your business acceleration, we are more than happy to schedule a free consultation session and give you our feedback. For that, you can click on the link shared on the screen and pick a time that works best for you. Now that we have a time that we've covered the theory, I think it's a perfect time to talk about some common cases that affect many companies, regardless of the industries they operate in.
Okay, without further ado, let's get into it. Many of our clients didn't come to us exactly for legacy modernization. They came to us seeking solutions to various problems they were experiencing with their software. And as Nune already told you guys, the first thing we do is set up discovery sessions to analyze our clients' projects and understand what challenges we are going to face in the process. And often enough, we find that they have a legacy system at hand that needs to be dealt with in a way that goes hand in hand with their business needs and strategy. The project cases I'm about to cover come from various industries like insurance, trading, governance, etc. At the time when they approached us, their software was at least 5 years old, and the technologies that they had used were pretty outdated, but fortunately for us and them, not too old. And so let's go over these common difficulties and challenges that companies experience. Very often, the development teams, these can be both in-house and outsourced teams that were working on their systems, either no longer worked for them or there were only a handful of people left, which means no point of contact existed to cooperate during code changes. Because of this, it took us considerable time to dive into the code and understand all the code relations without having any help from an insider. And you can understand how this affects the length of the process. It took more time. And another common problem was missing documentations for the application behavior, of course, meaning there was no possible way to check whether a change in the functionality would affect the entire system. In other words, you fix one issue and end up causing 10 other issues as a result. To deal with these type of issues, we included business analysts together with the dev team in the intensive discovery sessions with clients to go over their system features by feature and together with them define the acceptance criteria by investigating the code and eventually documenting it ourselves. Yeah. And the last but not least, we had cases when there were no automation tests on the system. When we don't have automation tests, it creates difficulties in system consistency. And so we had our automation QA engineers write automation tests based on the application criteria, which would run before and after the modernization, feature by feature, to make sure we have the same results as before. And now let's talk about the exact actions we took with a few technical descriptions and explain what issues they solved. Yeah, the first, we'll talk about constant breakages. We re-architected some nested services from the monolithic applications into microservices with separate databases, and some of the services were fully rebuilt. That way, the failure of the service did not cause the whole system to fail. Each service had its responsibility scope and issue logging, so we could easily find out which part of the system was causing an issue. And to ensure the consistency of the system, our automation QAs wrote auto tests on the major functionalities and the ones which often broke down. That way, we made sure that any issues on these parts would be found in the testing stage automatically before releasing the software. And let's talk about data security issues. To control the security of the data, first we encapsulated the data and its exposure functions via APIs. After that, API testing was run through all the APIs to check if more than necessary data is exposed to the client side. Next problem is flexibility and compatibility issues. Keeping in mind the importance for the business to integrate with other modern technologies, we replatformed some parts of the application by almost not touching the original legacy code, but instead having wrappers around it. In the front end, we handled it by using web components, and on the back end via APIs. And next problem, outdated technologies with no official support. Outdated technologies come with many issues. They have no official support. There are fewer and fewer professionals willing and capable of working with them. And implementing new features or fixing defects takes way too long. And after having separated responsibilities into microservices, it became possible to refactor sessions separately by upgrading to newer technologies which were safer and had official support. And in the front end, we embedded the newer tech Angular app inside the old structure, so we could work with newer code inside the legacy one. This also made it possible to do new feature developments faster and newer technologies without stopping the addition of new business features. Next one, let's talk about low performance issues. Overall, the applications were rich in functionalities with having manipulations with big data portions. And to increase the performance of the system, we optimized the memory usage by refactoring to using correct data structures instead of default ones, and re-architecting to iDisposable pattern for freeing memory when the data is not in usage. And synchronous calls from the user interface were transformed to asynchronous, so users didn't feel the freeze of the application even on time-consuming actions. Since a lot of unnecessary data was being loaded from the database, we refactored it to retrieve only necessary columns and added early filtering and paging so users could lazy load the data in parts when necessary. And of course, almost no modernization process is complete without rehosting. There's so much to speak about regarding the processes of rehosting and cloud enablement.
Yes. And that's another story to tell, as containerization and migration to cloud is a big, big topic. We are going to have a separate webinar session for that.
Yeah, I mentioned it just so you know that happened here as well.
Yeah, good. So, dear audience, please stay tuned, and we will update you about the next webinar session soon. Ani, thank you very much for your thorough presentation of past projects and their solutions. But related to this, I wanted to ask you both, can you mention some of the outcomes of this effort from a technical and business perspective? And was the modernization process overall beneficial for the client side?
Well, I don't want to say that everything was ideal, but it was infinitely better than what the clients had before the transformation. To mention some of the benefits, I can say that users stopped experiencing timeouts or frustration because of low speed. And we could have months without system failures when before that was happening a few times in a day even.
Yeah, and from business perspective, let me just mention a few. So businesses could start focusing on the new feature development alongside with the processes of legacy transformation, because even if you need the legacy transformation, your business needs to go forward. So this is very important. It could happen quicker. And of course, as the systems became more scalable, it was possible to integrate with third-party application, many applications that we understand that currently in this timing, it's very important for any businesses to be able to integrate with each other.
Yeah, and honestly, working with such systems started becoming a pleasure for both for us and for clients.
Yeah, wonderful. So I will try to sum up that legacy transformation can provide a range of benefits to businesses, including improved scalability, better integration with third-party applications, and the ability to develop new features alongside the transformation process. So upgrading legacy systems can also eliminate issues such as timeouts and system failures, resulting in a more enjoyable experience for both users and developers. So overall, legacy transformation can help businesses stay competitive and increase efficiency by providing better services to their customers. Now, as we have some extra time, let's go through the questions that our audience asked. So let me pick the first question. There are some questions coming out. Just a second. I will try. So the first question, have you had any experience of increasing the speed of getting data from the database?
Let me take that one. Yes, for optimizing data retrieval from database, we have used caching mechanisms, in particular Redis and in-memory cache for data that wasn't changing very often. But for data which was manipulated more frequently, we have used Elasticsearch.
Okay. Now let me move forward with the other one. What experience do you have in making a full assessment of the application landscape where all applications are not known due to, for example, acquisition of companies and thereby unknown applications?
Okay, let me try to answer to that. So we have had in our experience legacy systems that came to us that had a lot of components with third-party businesses, if I understood the question correctly. And most of the time, these third-party application contacts were unavailable, and we really didn't know how these systems could interact with each other. So when changing something and breaking something, it was unknown if we broke something in these other application components. So what we have done, of course, we try to reach out to understand if there is any documentation, what is going to be transferred between these two systems. And most of the time, as we couldn't understand that, what we did is we know the interface, how the systems interact with each other. So this interface had to stay untouched. So we modify the code, we do the restructure, the architect, everything. But we have to make sure that the end result that the system exposed to the other applications has to stay constant. Usually it was an old format system, XML-based data. So we just made sure that even if all our application data was working in JSON format, when interacting with these unknown applications, we had to pass this old versioned XML format. So yes, we have had it. Even now we have these new technology systems that still interact with unknown businesses, but we push the XMLs and sometimes we get the answer, so we just know it's working. And our monitoring just says that on code level, there are just no errors. If I answered the question, yeah.
Okay. Let me move forward with the other one. So after wrapping your data exposure with APIs, how were you still sure that no unnecessary data was being retrieved by users?
Of course, we used permission checkings for all the APIs calls, and we have used role-based ASP.NET identity, and for some custom cases, action claim-based checkings. This were done.
Okay. So the next one, what experience do you have with replacing client solution when restructuring of big DB is required to meet new business requirements and architecture? Thanks. Thank you for your question.
I just remembered one experience, so I can tell about that. So we had a monolith application that came to us. It was big enough. It was existing a few years. And we decided to change it to monolith. So that was a case. There was, of course, a big database because it had a lot of functionalities and everything was centralized in one DB. So what we did to stay in touch with the client, so very closely, our guys went to the business trip, and for a month, almost for a month, they stayed together and we did these separations. So what we did first, of course, we couldn't break the database to some parts. So first in the monolith code, we separated the modules that were going to become microservices later, just physically in different folders. So logically, we could separate them. After it, the common sections, we moved to some, let's say, common folder. And we prepared ourselves to go to separation. What we did, all the modules became microservices. The common ones became packages that all microservices could use. And as we separated the modules with their domains, it was, let's say, comparably easy and understandable how the database was going to break. Because as we had the domains separated, we could separate the database. And it's still an ongoing project. And currently, with that application, we have something like 30 microservices. Some of them do not have a database. It's not necessary, but for most of them, all the databases are separate. So I think that's an experience that we did. Yeah, it just took a very hard 1 month work from us to fully concentrate on it and be in the flow.
Okay. So let me move forward with the next question. Please tell about your experience in terms of upgrading whole project versions.
Yeah. Let me tell about that a bit. We have done upgrades from .NET Framework to .NET Core. And if the application is rich in functionality, it usually uses a lot of packages. And the most challenging part is to make sure all the packages versions talk to each other.
And the same from the front end, because the same challenges we had met in front end part when we did Angular major version upgrades. So we had a lot of packages, and the most challenging part, yes, again, was for these packages versions to talk to each other. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question: is it possible to work on the legacy applications and on the legacy application and deliver new features along with modernization?
I think I've mentioned that in the presentation. Of course, as mentioned, this approach is possible. That's something that is called continuous modernization. That's when some parts of the system are being modernized, let's say by a separate team. The others are being developed or changed. It can be done with the same team or separate team again. Yes, so the short answer is yes, it's possible. And most of the cases, that's what the client wants, because he doesn't want to stop the business and focus for a few months on modernization. Usually what they want is the business to go forward, but to dedicate some resources, time and money, let's say, to modernize it, let's say, in a continuous way.
Okay. Another question from Rahul. Any automation tools used for modernization?
Oh, automation tool, Ani? Have we had that? I guess no. No.
Sorry, I was muted. No,
Yeah.
we hadn't. No.
Automation tool. No, I remember we were researching a tool that we could convert an old Access code to .NET code. There were some ready solutions. It was an automation tool, but eventually we did not pick that because it didn't match for the custom cases. It was very generic, so we thought that if we do that, we are going to rework on it anyway. I don't remember the tool name. I just remember it was from Access to .NET. If it's about automation tools from testing perspective, of course, we have that in our automation frameworks, but that's not a tool for modernization. Yes, those are the tools that are just used from testing purpose, just as Ani mentioned, to evaluate the functionality, how it was, and it stays the same. Okay, so as a tool, only the Access and .NET. Others were all custom, because we didn't have many language changes, and that one was a language change, if I'm not wrong. Any other questions, Miriam? You are muted, Miriam.
I'm so sorry. The other question is, have you a problem for integration data between new re-architected project and legacy project, and how to handle exceptions between them?
Integration data between new and old. I understand it in two ways. One is that when we re-architect, the data structure is changed, maybe how we evaluate that it's correct. Also, another project comes to my mind, an ongoing project where we are doing a complete refactoring, I would say rewriting, and how we evaluate that everything is correct. We manually check the database, the old structure and the new, for the scripts to give the same results, the select scripts, because the results here and here should be the same. It's just how the data is kept. Yes, it's restructured, if that was the question. So yes, we had that problem. And very often in that case, our testing is based on DB. So even our QAs are testing that the modernization is done, not only by application and UI, manual and automation, but also by database. So with SQL, we know how it was in the old database, what was the result. The same result should be here with another scripts, of course, but the data should give the same things. And exceptions between them, if it's about the errors, again, from the testing phase, it was becoming real, again, from manual and from automation, because if there is an exception, an error in the data, not integrating between each other, it's going to be resulted either in the logging system, if it's not visible, either it's going to be visible in the application, which our QAs did not miss.
I can add something about that. And restructuring in DB is possible even in the same DB, to separate the data from one column to another table or something like that. We have done that with help of migration scripts, and of course we have tested it before doing that in client-side DB. Yeah.
Okay, I think this much with the questions. If there are some more left, we are happy to answer them after the webinar session. And as we conclude, I want to say that remind you that as a token of appreciation for your participation in this webinar, we are offering a free consultation to all registered attendees for your software assessment. So to take advantage of this opportunity, you can simply follow the link provided on your screen to book a time, and we'll reach out to you for the consultation process setup. I hope that today's webinar discussion was insightful for you, dear audience. Of course, there's a lot to learn, and we got lots of input when discussing real-life concerns and problems with their optimal solutions. But clearly, there is also a lot to discuss. So it just reminds for me to say a huge thank you to our speakers, Nune and Ani. Thank you, girls, for your input. And yeah, I hope we will meet once again during our next editions. So stay tuned for our next editions of VOLO Tech Talks. Have a nice one, and bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Goodbye.